child in the distance, playing in the rain, the sweet sound of water flowing away, the construction worker coming home from work, two parents and their children going to church.
That's why this is important, and I'm sure you're all aware of, the global pandemic when it comes to climate change and so on. And it will interest you that while other industries, which could be manufacturing industry, aviation industry, they all contribute to carbon emissions and the energy, substantial energy use we have it globally, and is one of the leading causes of climate change. But almost 40% of this energy is associated to the built environment, associated to the buildings that are constructed, however they are constructed. It could be a shanty, it could be a one-bedroom apartment, it could be a hotel, but they all collectively contribute to carbon emissions in our environment. Specifically, my research focuses mostly on the New Zealand built environment, and that is what I have here, that 20% of New Zealand carbon emissions are generated by the built environment. This is reduced, this is 20% because New Zealand's main source of energy and of electricity is quite sustainable, and that is hydro. So New Zealand doesn't really have that much issue when it comes to the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity. But then still, the activities, when it comes to the construction activities and so on, that go on, and also how buildings are used and how they operated, contribute significantly to this 20% of carbon emissions that are generated within the construction industry. Now, this is about the energy use and carbon emissions, but there's also a cost impact to all this use. Energy use actually costs organizations and households more than $800 million every year. And these have a lot of impacts on the productivity of the companies, and also the well-being of workers, as well as the home occupants or users. I was also able to see if I could do some comparison with one of the most populous countries in the world, as USA. And it says here that also energy use costs businesses up to $168 billion every year. And this has to do with occupancy costs. By occupancy costs is how much money they spend in making sure that the light is on all the time, how much money they spend in making sure that the indoor environment quality is perfect, how much money they spend to make sure that the temperature is right for occupants. So you can see most of the value or financial costs of running a facility has a lot to do with the occupants or the users in the building, what we want and how we feel that we want the environment to be. And it's also related to a lot of things. We care because an environment that is not healthy would make us sick. An environment that is not healthy too would cause building syndrome. That is where you're in a building space and then one person is sick, and when one person is sick, every other person gets one after the other. And then all these also brought to loss in productivity, whether it's at your home or even in your workspace. So what I try to do here is not to sound so foreign, but to relate this to the Nigerian energy challenges. And I kind of looked at the energy challenges in Nigeria, and it's a bit different from the situation we have in New Zealand here. While New Zealand's energy issues focuses mostly on how occupants, use the spaces and how much energy is being used in running buildings. The Nigerian case is mostly in the provision of, the electricity itself. I've listed some here, which I know most of you would know more than me about this. Some of them could be the environmental impacts of, getting the fossil fuels to generate the electricity and so on. Some financial constraints and very common vandalization of pipes and so on that goes on in Nigeria. I put on the slide, just to make it a bit interactive, to see if there are other challenges that I have not captured, which I would like you to, contribute to. So if you can educate me more to say some other challenges that energy faces when it comes to the provision of energy in the country. Sorry, I can't see you because I'm using one screen and I have to be sharing my screen to do the presentation. So please just feel free to say if there are any other challenges that I have not captured on this slide. Okay. I think I think I'm finding it difficult. Yeah, I think I'm finding.
Limited access, then the cost of the
Oh, yes. Yes, yes. Thank you for that. Yeah, limited access and costs. Yeah, that associated. Thanks a lot for that. My apologies, I can't really hear you well. It might just be because of the network there. So we have talked about the energy itself, but it's also important for us to look at how our buildings are. And I quite know that, or you will agree with me that, the a greater population, a greater percentage of the building stock in Nigeria is quite poor, that we know. And a lot of attention has been on, the shanties and the poor living conditions of really poor houses. But have we also kind of looked at the houses we deem to be comfortable, to be good, and kind of find out, how these buildings are affecting us in terms of our health and our comfort? So this is a research my research group is doing. We have been monitoring homes in New Zealand. We have more than 30 homes. We have a database where we're building our case. We're trying to record, how poor New Zealand homes are. Without realizing whereas people don't realize it. We are also looking at mostly tenants and even building owners, and we're monitoring their houses. From the monitoring we've done, are the common issues we have noticed in houses: fungal infections, allergies, stress, depression, and some others that influence, that affects the occupants or the users of the houses. If you also look at the pictures that I put in here, you see some signs of some houses you see. Now, if I'm to give a bit of a background, New Zealand is on the other side of the world. So it is a temperate zone, closer to it being a colder region other than Nigeria. So while in Nigeria you might have issues like overheating, sweating and so on, the opposite is the case for New Zealand, where most of the homes are regarded as cold, damp, with lots of molds in the buildings. But the interesting thing is, irrespective of where we are in the world, one common thing is all homes have an effect on our health and our comfort. And another common or similarity between whether it's a developed country or a developing country is what we call the fuel poverty, meaning that a significant number of people still find it difficult to afford effective heating for their homes. And of course, in Nigeria, we will be able to identify, with this kind of a situation. But it was also interesting to know that even in a developed country in New Zealand, also a significant number of tenants and even some homeowners also suffer the same plight. So I had here to kind of, ask you if you have ever experienced this kind of a things in your home. And I'm making a huge assumption here that we all live in fairly good homes, good houses, that has doors, windows, and so. So if I would call out, I would read out these problems, and then if you can just raise your hand and let's see how many people can identify with not just them experiencing these things, but maybe a member of the family or a friend or co-roommates and so on, might experience this. Asthma, if I call out and you have experience or know somebody, just please raise up your hand. Asthma, pneumonia. Pneumonia was one of the ones I suffered a lot when I was in Nigeria and growing up. Cholera, typhoid fever, dysentery, malaria, very common in Nigeria, dengue fever.
Everybody's
I know, malaria. Yeah, malaria is so common. Even food poisoning. It would interest you that some of these things that I've mentioned here, we would not normally associate them with the kind of homes we live in. We would think I walked around one marketplace in area. Sorry, I'm from Abia State, so I'll use Aba as my, case studies. And that's how I got, food poisoning. Maybe I ate in one buka, and that's how I got food poisoning. But research shows that some of these things that we think we got, that, we might get from eating poor food or so outside, might actually be a function of the homes where we live, homes where we wake up every day. Things like diarrhea, even carbon monoxide poisoning is very common in homes. And you may ask me why. One of the things I was presenting to, I think it was the West African women in construction yesterday, and one of the things one of them said, I think she was a lady from Nigeria, she said is kitchens. The kitchens in Nigeria are known to be extremely hot, and that is one of the sources of communicable diseases and so on, because when the temperature rises, and it's humid, infections and fungi and all viruses breed in such situations and in such conditions. Another one that is not necessarily, highly talked about is stress and anxiety, as well as depression. We always associate stress, anxiety, depression to somebody talking back to us, or our boss, pissing us off in the office, or having too much work, or not having money. But research has also shown that stress and anxiety, as well as depression, can be associated with the kind of home we live in, how our home is, what our home breeds, and what our home breeds out. So, I guess the essence here is we need to start seeing our homes not just as a structure where we come in and go out, but as a significant part of our daily life, of our comfort, of our health, and as well as our ability to function properly every day. And that is why I asked the question, how healthy do you think your home is? Now, I don't expect you to answer me now, but when you go home, you can look around your house and really see if you can identify signs of an unhealthy home in your house. Okay, so I'm just thinking that with all of this I've said, the next question that will be on your mind is, so how do we know a healthy home? What are the things that will make a home healthy? Well, the international standards have told us what we need to have in a space, that would be conducive for us, and these fall under the indoor environment quality. Specifically, there are four main factors that make up this indoor environment quality. That's the type of lighting you have, the ventilation, or in other words, the indoor air quality. Specifically, how much CO2 levels are in your homes, how hot and warm or cold your house is, that's the thermal comfort and how you perceive it yourself, and how noisy your environment is. So these factors have been shown over and over again to have a significant impact on how healthy our homes are, and in other words, how healthy we'll be in these homes. So what I'm trying to say is, if you see someone who comes to work grumpy, is not smiling and is snapping at you, it could be that the person came out from a very unhealthy home. Okay, so what I've tried to do is to, say there are several ways, but the research community and the industry have tried to address, creating a healthy home for people. And it goes on and on. The latest ones are the technological solutions we have, where we have smart sensors and monitoring systems that make sure every second that a record of how much CO2 level is in our buildings are being recorded. The temperature, the PM levels, the particulate matters we have in it, and even the VOCs that are in the spaces are. And another thing that the technological solutions that we have now is having an adaptive and even a responsive HVAC system that adapt to comfort needs as well as are energy efficient, which means that you use little or no energy to run the systems. So those are some of the things that the industry has produced for us. Another aspect where we can take care of it is on how buildings are designed, and most importantly, the building envelope. And that's where we talk about sustainable design, and also when you're retrofitting houses or when you're changing the houses, the kind of changes you make to ensure that the house is better and not worse than it is. A very recent one that is gaining popularity is the continuous monitoring of homes and recording the lessons that are learned through it in order to inform for future designs. And that's where that falls under post-occupancy evaluation. I won't go so deep in it, but what I wanted to emphasize here is that despite the many solutions or the many strategies that have been brought up by the industry and also research to solve this problem, there is still an imbalance. There is still a tussle between how to design a space in a way that is energy efficient and how to control it. Specifically, you all know there are two ways you can control an indoor space. One is using just build a house and just put AC in it. The AC does all the work. But there are other ways that architects, designers, even environmentalists can look into the type of building materials they're using for the home, the type of building systems and so on they use for the homes, and the type of designer, how they oriented the windows and so on. And this has a lot to do with how much energy that is being used. So on this slide here, I've tried to depict it all, and also to show how much is making human beings depend mostly on air conditioning, and that by making us lose more control of the space and having what we call watch, which is just claiming to be green while we're not. So I have just been notified I need to hurry up with my presentations. So I will try and round up as soon as possible. So in my research, we've done all this research, to check whether passive control or mechanical control is the best. And what we found is, despite the fact that a naturally ventilated and a passively designed house is the best for people with so attached to technology that we want HVAC systems, we want air conditioning in our houses and in our offices. This is some of the research we've done. Look at over some buildings across the world. And also another thing we're trying to do is to put in sensors, smart sensors into buildings and monitor the temperature, the power use, and how much carbon emissions are being given up per year as a result of the activities that go on in the building. So what have we found? And I decided to pick out workplaces because I know this is a work environment you all came to work today, is that being comfortable does not necessarily mean that you have the ability to work. That is one myth that was going on in the industry, in research for a long time. That once you're comfortable, you're able to be productive. But that's not necessarily the case, because so much comfort can make life easy to do work, and that's another conversation for another day. But something significant we have to realize is that the ability to achieve comfort is the main influence in energy use. That is the reason why we're using more and more energy, because as users, as occupants in a house, we want that comfort more and more. And the more comfort we have, the more we have ACs in every room in the house. Even though we have windows, rather we close the windows and use the ACs more and more. Something else we also found is the older you are, the more you are affected by how you feel about a space and so on. I will share my slides so you guys can read more. So I wanted to ask you guys these questions to see if you can relate to all I've been talking about. And some of them are you, and again, raise your hand if this relates to you. Do you feel productive when you're comfortable? Do you feel like, yes, I can work because I'm comfortable in this space? I'm expecting there are lots of hands raised up. The next one is, have you had to increase your AC or switch on the light just because you want to feel more comfortable? Not necessarily because you are extremely uncomfortable, but just to increase a bit of your comfort. I'm expecting some hands up. Another question is, have you ever felt too comfortable at work that you're like, oh, I beg today, I don't get strength to work at all, but you're comfortable. It's not like you're too hot or you're too cold, but I think power no day to do any work. For those who work in offices, and I'm expecting that some of you have shared spaces and also have individual spaces, which one do you think you prefer from your experience? Do you prefer to have your own space or share it with people? And from my experience, this question has been divided. Some say they prefer private spaces, some say they prefer shared spaces. And I would like you guys to tell me which one you prefer at the end of it. Do you like having the ability to switch on the AC on and off when it suits you? I'm expecting that will be a yes. Another question is, do you ever find it difficult to work when there are more people in your office? Something very common I know is that for someone like me, when I have people around me, oh, it's just time. We will talk and talk and talk. So that is often an impediment to productivity. Do you also find that when you have older people or older colleagues with you in the office space, there's always this tussle of, oh, it's too cold, turn down the AC, or it's too hot, turn on the AC. There's always this issue with getting the right temperature for the space. Another question is, when you spend too much time in the office, let's say you started working at 7 a.m. and you're still in the office around 6 p.m., 7 p.m., does the office begin to get stuffy or smell, not necessarily because there's been any change, but just you being there for a long time? And again, do you find the office too noisy to work in? Now, if you answered yes, or you raise up your hand for any of these questions, it will interest you to know that it's our expectations of, we agreeing that we need some of this comfort. It's what contributes to energy use. We ask the same kind of questions to occupants or office workers in New Zealand. And you can see here, I would say they have similar desire from what you have, irrespective of the difference in climatic zones and so on. I mean, everybody wants a private office, everybody wants the offices to be cleaned regular. Some say daily, some say hourly, and so on. Some also want to have the ability, to control the indoor environment quality. They all like less noise and so on. So what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say here is, irrespective of the fact that we have a lot of HVAC systems, we have a lot of, automated measures to create this comfort, people are still not comfortable with their indoor environment. It is often hard to find anybody that is 100% comfortable with the indoor space. Why? Because, we are human beings. Our expectations change often. And it seems as if naturally human beings are insatiable. We want more. The more we're given, the more we want. So what impact does this have on energy use? It means that energy use will keep going higher because we want more. So I put it on this side that a significant portion of the 80% emission reduction targets remains unfulfilled, whereas the building stock is growing. So the more buildings we create, and even though we try and create them with environmental strategies, still we are not achieving this. And the reason is mainly because of how our buildings operate, and that is the user element in the buildings. This is an example of a work that was done. This is actually an industry work that was done where they expected that when they change all the HVAC systems to energy efficient ones, that there would be significant energy use drop. Now, there was the yellow one is what they projected, the planned energy consumption that would drop from the purple one. But actually, the final result was the red one. You can see the difference between what they projected and the actual energy consumption after the changes have been made. Now, I must mention, yes, there was a drop from the original state to this, but when you compare what they had planned with what they actually achieved, there's a significant gap. So my question is, where is the missing link? So our research is asking this question: how, is it possible for us to make difference, me and you in our office spaces at our homes, healthy, while at the same time not contributing to climate change by reducing the amount of energy that is being used? And this is what we found. We found that the solution lies with me and you, because if energy demand is reduced, then there'll be less need to supply more energy. So the more we reduce our expectations of what an indoor environment quality should be, of what our indoor space should be, when we reduce our expectations of how much, the AC needs to be on 24/7 for us to be comfortable in the space, that is a way we are reducing our energy use. So I've put in here and I've asked these questions. It's high time that occupants begin to take part in managing our buildings, in every way, respective of your background. And when we deliberately take on energy-wise actions, that we can actually achieve comfort and energy efficiency. Due to time, I won't ask you these questions, but what I wanted to explain here is that energy-wise behavior are, those practices that we adopt to ensure that we lower energy bills, we reduce greenhouse emission, and we minimize environmental conditions. So these are some of them that I've listed here. I won't talk about it because I've been told to hurry up and finish up. So I wanted to talk to you guys about an experiment my research has done to test this and see if really we can reduce energy use as occupants. So quickly, what we did here was to develop a digitalized system where we begin to prompt people to take energy-wise actions. When you feel hot, instead of putting on the AC, you could open the windows, or you could do some other things. You could, go take a shower, do some other things to reduce your discomfort. And we tested this on an office space. And this was what we found. When we supplied occupants, and which is users, with those mitigation actions, their comfort and their perception of a poor indoor environment quality improved. You can see here that before we did the experiment, they felt the place was stuffy, and then afterwards, their perception of the stuffiness in the air reduced, and also their productivity as well as their healthy environment. Something important I have to mention here is that we achieved this without changing the indoor environment quality. We didn't turn up, we didn't change the temperature, we didn't change the CO2 level. Everything was the same. But because occupants and users were able to make changes to their comfort themselves, they felt they were more comfortable. So we are achieving a win-win situation here, where we're achieving more comfort as well as not increasing energy use in buildings. So yes, this is my last slide. So in order to end, what I want to stress here is that in our ways, whatever we're doing in our little ways, we need to begin to realize that we're part of the solution when it comes to sustainability, energy efficiency. The time has passed when we rely on buildings to be energy efficient and to do the work themselves. We should begin to realize that we play a significant part in ensuring that our buildings are well maintained and then they are energy efficient for us. And the way to achieve this is taking control of our comforts and it being as we want it to be. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will stop sharing so I can see your faces.
Hello, Dr. Eziaku. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Please stand by for questions. Before we start firing the question, I just want to give you a little tip. She's my younger sister. So let the question not be too hard. So, I know we have a lot of questions. Thank you so much, Lord, for this very insightful presentation.
Thank
I don't
you.
know if you can repost the first slide on challenges of power supply in Nigeria. Because I don't know if it was actually part of what I want to say. From my observation here in Nigeria, in my area where I live, our transformer is always having issues. They'll say today, because of overload, the transformer will blow, and for a very long time, we don't have lights. So, is there any measure, okay, for the transformer to be monitored? That when there is overload, it can detect instead of suffering the innocent people living around there. And then also one of the challenges also in Nigeria, I would say, is bribery and corruption. Rumor has it that there are some areas in Port Harcourt, for instance, that don't have lights more than some persons. And that these people, they go ahead to meet NEPA officials to favor their environment. So those are part of the challenges we are having in Nigeria. God help us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I am not a stranger to it. I grew up in Aba, and I lived for about.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Let's take like 2 more questions, or all so that you just answer us.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eziaku, for that presentation. And personally, I think there's any way that we can have a very comfortable life without using energy. Where would it start from? Is it the cooling that they have said? Or is it cooking? We need to use energy to move time. Every other aspect, most of the people using comfortable lives use with great amounts of energy. So I think the only option I think is maybe alternative source and all that, but we're still using energy. Is it possible to live a comfortable life without using energy? Any other questions? Thank you both for the presentation. I want to ask, because I saw on one of your slides, temperature, degrees, Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit, then for comfort in each environment. Is it that the hopes in New Zealand there are able to implement that natural system? Or here in Nigeria, how come we are doing that? We don't build our houses with the movement to ensure those temperature that will be just focused.
Sorry, I didn't. Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear the last question. Can you?
In Nigeria, we don't build our houses with any thermometer to measure those factors you mentioned. How do you think we can achieve that? Any other questions? So I think these are the questions. Please, we need your questions.
Thank you. Okay, I'll start with the first one. Yes, like what I was saying earlier, I'm quite conversant with the issues with the overload of electricity and so on, and also with not having any way of monitoring it. These are issues in Nigeria, sorry, that are beyond the building user control. I mean, the everyday person, me and you also talking about the bribery and corruption, and with that, these are issues that we have. These are issues that we don't think will go away unless God touches the hearts of people in the government, to change. But there are ways that we, as building users, can also gain some form of control over our own comfort, as well as how we provide electricity for ourselves. If you check in countries like, and I'm sure some other places, some parts of Nigeria are also trying this out. Places like India, they use a lot of solar energy. There is this very interesting one where they just put water in a, what do you call it, in a bottle, and it supplies light, because there is constant solar gain. I mean, Nigeria is a tropical zone, so there is constant solar gain to give us 24 hours energy. If we are able to capture this solar gain as much as possible. So what I would suggest and encourage is, explore the non-renewable measures that can at least supply us light. A lot of, my opinion, I do think that Nigeria should not even depend on the grid for our electricity, considering the amount of sunlight we have available for us. So that could be something, you could advocate, you could try and see how you can do. There are lots of bright people in Nigeria, that can devise a solar light system and LED lights, to use. In terms of the question, how can we live a comfortable life without energy? The answer is no, we cannot. So it would be unrealistic for me to preach the gospel and say, to use zero energy and be comfortable. No. What we are trying to achieve here is a balance between comfort and energy, which means that we reducing our expectations and realizing the fact that human beings are adaptable. The truth is we can live in a wider range of temperature than we have subjected ourselves to. Research has shown that while some of us prefer a place that has, minimum 18 degrees and so on, but we can actually live between 14, 16 degrees all up to, 26, 27 degrees and still live an okay life. So when we reduce our expectations and not expecting, to be in AC 24/7, we will adapt to it, and we can that way reduce requiring excess energy to supply us some of this comfort that we need. The last question was about monitoring systems for our houses. Yes, and even in most most developed countries, it's still a new thing. In New Zealand here, it's still a thing that some homes are adopting, so it's not widespread. I would say that every building has a monitoring system, but why, if monitoring systems is not something achievable in Nigeria?